Welcome to Skol Sessions, the Viking Athletics podcast where strength meets smarts. I am your host, Erik Castiglione, owner and head coach of Viking Athletics. And today I am joined by longtime member Michael Shelby. If you know him in the gym, it's Shelby. If you know him outside the gym, it's probably Michael. And if you're a coach, it's fucking Shelby. So welcome to the podcast, Shelby, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Erik.
Today, this is probably one of the more important podcasts that we're doing. We're going to be discussing I guess you could call it a widespread epidemic, especially in the US, body dysmorphia. So, Shelby, I just want to get a little bit into your background. And I think anyone in the gym, obviously, that's been there for a while, we all know you as a Russian hacker. But you made a career change a few years ago, correct?
I did. I switched over a number of years into psychology. I'm a therapist. I'm a mental health professional. I still love computers. I still love hacking. But no one is hiring 60-year-old hackers anymore. However, a 60-year-old psychologist, a therapist, or a mental health professional is just starting in his career. And I very much like what I'm doing. And I think that it is a good fit for me. I've been doing it for a number of years. And it is something that is very helpful to society, better than hacking, actually helping people as a therapist, saving lives. I like that. I feel better about myself at night. I sleep better.
Fantastic. Do you have an area of specialty? I know you wrote a book recently, correct, on technology addiction?
I did. My book came out in December. It is called Technology Addiction Manual, How to Recognize It, How to Treat It. It is something that I have been involved in for well over 2 decades with Dr. David Greenfield. It is the area of addiction in general. As you well know, I'm 23 and a half years in recovery myself. Not the technology aspect of it, but the regular chemical stuff. And this subspecialty is something that has been in the news and of special interest to me for a long, long time. Internet gaming, gambling, shopping, porn, you name it. People dive into YouTube and they forget to come up for air. It has wrecked as many lives, I would say, as alcoholism and drug addiction. It is just another form of addiction, and this is something that I do work in, I specialize in, and very, very closely tracking this particular area.
Sounds like good work. And that's a big reason that I wanted to bring you on is obviously I guess I can call you an addiction specialist. Body dysmorphia is hugely pertinent in our society. You see it's pretty widespread, and it has been for a long time. And I think it is kind of an addiction in some ways. People obsess over how they look. Nobody's really ever happy with their progress and their end result. We're always constantly looking to be a little leaner, be a little bit more muscular, or what have you, have that so-called ideal shape. And that is why I wanted to get your perspective on it. So I don't know how familiar you are with this from a clinical perspective, but I wanted to hear your thoughts kind of on, well, let's start at the beginning. What is body dysmorphia?
What is dysmorphia anyway, before we introduce the word body to it? Yeah, it is a maladjustment. It is, I'm unhappy with what I see. I want to morph into something different. I am not my visual representation in the mirror. Body dysmorphia is a feeling. It is a feeling that it's a very real feeling. It is an uncomfortable, unsettling feeling that people experience based on the visual feedback of how they perceive their bodies, not how their bodies actually look to other people, but how they themselves perceive their bodies look versus how the body, quote unquote, should look. What is the image, mental image of my body? And what I see does not correspond to what it should look like and what I want to see. And that's the dis-ease, the dysmorphia, the distance, the delta between the two is the dysmorphia connected to the body image, body shape.
Makes sense. So I think that was a big point there, your self-perception as opposed to what is the reality and, how the body should look. I know you and I have talked in the past, don't should all over me, and how should can be a very toxic word. And it's this expectation of what we're supposed to be. And, that idea of what is ideal. So I know you and I chatted about it briefly a little earlier on where does this idea of the ideal come from?
How much time do we have for this podcast? Let me count the ways. It is almost too easy to blame societal images and societal messages. We talked about our upbringing. We talked about images from our childhood, from comic books, from movies, the transformation of G.I. Joe and X-Men from a regular-looking guy to a very pumped bodybuilder in just over a decade. It changed. I don't know if we start, with Arnold. I don't know if we start with whatnot, but this almost unmaintainable, not unachievable, but unmaintainable, tapered look of a man, big biceps, well-defined muscles, the proverbial six-pack that everyone's chasing, including me. And if we try to get there for whatever good reasons we think we need to get there, and we get there, we can't really stay there for too long and be comfortable. It's not what body likes to do, to be sub 6, sub 8% body fat and chiseled all the time. And yet, every movie, every action movie, every message, every ad in men's magazines, women's magazines, every commercial, you see abs, you see muscles, you see very lean look for men and women. And people think that's the norm. That's what we want. We want that. It's a marketing message. And they misconstrue that as quote unquote healthy. That's what healthy is. 16% body fat is very healthy. 12% body fat is very healthy. 60% body fat is not very healthy. It's a messaging. And it is, I think, more prevalent in our societies because you and I we both traveled a lot. I just came back from a trip internationally. It's not as prevalent outside of the United States.
Yeah, I think you hit on a ton right there. Where it comes from, and we could start with Arnold. The idea of this. I promoted this in our private Facebook group a while ago. I love the documentary Bigger, Faster, Stronger because it is literally three brothers who decide that, muscles are your claim to fame. They are basically your ticket to the American dream. And they cite Arnold as kind of the mold for that, became famous as a bodybuilder, went from bodybuilding into acting, married a Kennedy, went into politics, and, muscles were the key to that. So they try to replicate that. And they grew up watching all of his movies, just this ass-kicking hero who happens to be totally jacked. And you brought up, we talked about my upbringing, and you look at the X-Men cartoon of the 90s, and even Charles Xavier, who's paraplegic, has a freaking six-pack when they show him on the parallel bars. And we're just constantly... Right. So we're constantly bombarded with these images. And I would go back further, honestly. I would go back to Greek times. You're looking at Greek statues, and this is what the ideal male looks like. Now, to be fair, they do have... If you look at the bottom of their abs, they do have that little roll of fat there.
Yeah.
But still, this is the ideal male, and it ties into we've been bombarded with that our whole lives. And you brought up the G.I. Joe scene that I showed you from that Bigger, Faster, Stronger, which I love, is the G.I. Joe in the 1960s is just your average lean-looking dude. And then a decade later, he has a six-pack. And then in the 90s, he has a six-pack and big biceps. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the 2000s, and it's just this tank of a human being, bigger than Terry Crews. And I think, the marketing piece is huge, absolutely, because everybody's trying to sell supplements and workout programs. And, I literally just filmed a video the other day about fitness buzzwords that need to die. Because this industry is so unregulated that anybody can pretty much sell anything, and as long as it isn't poison, there's nothing to stop you from doing it. So yeah, there's a ton of money to be made preying on people's insecurities, and we certainly see that a lot with marketing. And the last thing you brought up that I really wanted to hit on is, you said it's not healthy and it's not sustainable. And
I'm speaking from experience, you know that.
Well, there's that, but it's also, if you look at the sport of bodybuilding, when they're going on stage to compete is when they are at their least healthy. They are severely dehydrated. They are, one of my former coaches, prep bodybuilders, and one of the things that he would do for some of his people right before they got on stage is actually give them a drink or two of vodka to wring the water out of their system.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So they are dehydrated. They're on, some of them take skin thinners so that you can see the vascularity underneath. They're spray tanned like you wouldn't believe. And they're just irritable and miserable because they're not at their healthiest, even though they look their best, based on our, perception of the ideal. So
my own family asked me at my lowest 8.8 body fat, when I looked most vascular, I said, please don't do that ever again. We can't stand you. You're a fucking asshole. Plain and simple. Please don't ever do that. And I didn't. I listened to them. But I've never been sub 10 ever again.
So you're irritable. You don't have a lot of energy. And it certainly affects the mental side of things because of the sacrifice it takes to get there. And the flip side of that is, again, when we're talking about body dysmorphia, is even so, is that enough being there? Or are we still trying to get bigger? Are we still trying to get leaner? At what point is enough?
I think that's where it gets very individual, or if there is a big enough profit margin and payback in the end of it. You have a movie, you have a photo shoot that you're booked for, and it is directly related to your look, then people, actors, models, bodybuilders, competitive people will push themselves above and beyond. I think average, even a very active average person in our box, or people that I know, will not do that to themselves day in, day out for 6 months or a year to get to this one event where they look ideal but feel miserable. But people do it all the time, and that's the images that they see.
Yeah.
And that's what they imagine how normal people, that look becomes the new normal. But that's not the norm.
Exactly. And I'm thrilled to hear you mentioned actors. I love hearing Hugh Jackman, Henry Cavill, and I'm blanking on his name.
What role did he play?
Indian actor. He was in The Eternals.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. He built... Yes. I know exactly who you're talking about.
I love hearing them open up about what they are doing. It's not just the training. Hugh Jackman in particular, he had one shirtless scene in Days of Future Past where he's back in his 70s. He wakes up in the 70s and he gets shot at, but he's shirtless and he's incredibly vascular. And they actually tried to change the filming date of that scene. And he's like, no, we can't change it. I've been manipulating my water all week. That is the day that I will be ready. And so he actually went on, I love the Graham Norton show. He went on and he's sitting there next to Patrick Stewart after filming Logan. And he's talking about the sacrifices that it takes to look that way. And again, it's water manipulation. It's the fact that he's eating 6 meals of steamed chicken and steamed broccoli every day. And no, they don't look like that all year round. They can't maintain it, exactly like you said. Henry Cavill went on the show and is talking the same thing about water manipulation for that one particular shirtless scene.
For the Superman role.
For the Superman role.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, it is literally to look like that for one day for that.
The one shoot.
One shoot.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time, sure, they're still big, they're still in shape, but they are not that shredded and they're not that vascular because it's not sustainable. And I'm just thrilled to hear people talk about that now, whereas, sure, Arnold had some chemical help back in the day, but I'd be curious, what did he look like all year round, especially when he's no longer.
There's gotta be pictures of that somewhere.
I'm sure. But, he would start training hard anytime he had Terminator coming out. Correct. He had a shirtless role. He'd start training for that. So there is an off season, and it's what do people look like in the off season? They don't, but we never see that. So the internet, and I think, the marketing materials are tough because on the one hand, we're bombarded with it, but on the other hand, you now have these people that are coming out and saying, yeah. So the Indian actor whose name I'm blanking on was also like, anybody can do this as long as you have a studio footing the bills and giving you a personal chef, and it is your literal job to do this.
To look like that.
That
for
is
that
my
role.
job. So I love hearing that because it does provide context. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of us miss that. You got fitness influencers and everything's filtered and Photoshop these days. But
Photoshop, don't even get me started on the Photoshop. How much of this is not even real work, but a work of Photoshop skills? And people, with thinner waists and bigger shoulders and bigger boobs and bigger biceps, they don't look like anything like that in real life when you see video. It's like, that's not the actual image.
Yeah, Robin Williams live on Broadway talking about breast implants in Las Vegas. He's like, and even God's going, I didn't make those. I can't knock him too much. Plastic surgery did put me through college. Yes. Kumail Nanjiani, that's right.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember the name. But again, we've been talking mostly about male body dysmorphia, and you see it with females as well, obviously. And that's where I think there's a little bit of divergence. I know, we mentioned Greek statues, and that was kind of the ideal for men. And you and I talked earlier about female beauty standards there has been some evolution in what is considered attractive for a male, obviously, but I think we see it a lot more when we're talking about women.
Yep.
And I'm not an art history major, but I want to say,
look at Venus, look at the
Renaissance
statue.
Renaissance time,
Exactly.
Women were, what was considered beautiful was plumper women.
100%.
And that's
healthy, tight skin, not emaciated, no cheekbones, no six packs. Well, we didn't see their midsections, but
yeah, we did actually.
We did in some of them, but plumper. Look at Eve. Look at classical pictures of Eve. Do you see a thigh gap there? No. Thank you.
Again, the whole point was you are fertile, basically.
Yes.
That was considered the ideal, and that's obviously evolved, and we saw. Look at the 1990s. Well. Sir Mix-a-Lot aside,
the disco revolution, the tight skin,
you just super thin, emaciated women.
Yeah,
that was
Miss Twiggy. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh. And now we're seeing kind of the opposite, where it's fit women are considered. I know there was even in the CrossFit world, strong is the new skinny, strong is beautiful. There was that whole movement to popularize women that were more athletic and actually putting.
Do you think that is catching on with the popularity of CrossFit Games, the attire that people wear? They don't wear, a single full body covering suit. They wear tops and bottoms. They're painted on so people can see what the actual bodies in motion look like, and women are starting to see it and look at it and say, "God damn it! I want that more than I want thigh gap or, skinny bones sticking out of the ribs. And I don't know. What do you think?
The heroin chic look.
Don't get me started on that, Erik.
I don't know if that's catching on.
Okay.
I would hope so, just because there's, from my perspective, obviously I'm immersed in this world. And for the health benefits alone, I'm a huge advocate of strength training, conditioning, all that. I'd be out of a job and out of a business if I wasn't.
You would be surprised how many times outside of our microcosm I've heard strong is the new skinny. Normal people, older women, healthy-looking women, not emaciated, not built, not skinny. Strong is the new skinny. I'm doing weight training. I'm lifting. I'm squatting. I'm benching. The cardio is great. I love it. Blah blah blah. But I am lifting. I want to get stronger. I like how it makes me feel.
That is huge.
Yeah.
And if that's catching on, great. And that's kind of where I wanted to take this conversation. And when it comes to general health, that's what we care more about. Yeah, you can look at blood markers, you can look at body fat percentage and all that, but ultimately there's no substitute for how you feel on a regular basis. And strength training is a huge part of that and feeling good. So, that was going to be kind of the takeaway here, is how do we move on from this? And there's a big reason that, we focus a lot more on, and I will give CrossFit a ton of credit for this, focus on performance rather than how you look. Mm-hmm. And form follows function. So if you are physically capable of doing these things, what your body looks like is going to follow. And the caveat with that is,
I think CrossFit is such a good example. Again, you watch the games, and games are catching on. People are watching it. People are seeing it. And people see such different body types on both men and women.
Yes.
Some are big, some are bulky, some are slimmer, some are thinner, some are taller, some are a lot shorter. And yet, they are all able to move weight, to do pull-ups, to do hand walks, to carry heavy stuff, to clean, to deadlift, to squat heavy, to do movements that normal society says that I can't do that. And here you see someone who sort of kind of looks like you doing it. God damn it, if they can do it, I can do it.
Well,
it's a great example.
I'm actually... They do analyze statistically what the average CrossFit Games athlete looks like. I'm actually a little taller and a lot heavier than a typical CrossFit Games athlete.
Taller? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a running joke back in the day.
What's the joke?
The running joke was back when Rich Froning was champ, and it was, Rich Froning is not the fittest man on earth. He is the fittest white male under 6 feet with disposable income.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, there were some good CrossFit trolls back in the day, and I thought that was pretty hilarious. But the point is, the breadth of what they're able to do. You look at these guys, and they could qualify for nationals in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, but they can also run sub 6 minute miles,
exactly.
Swim, walk on their hands, and it's pretty damn amazing.
Thank you for teaching me term bignastics. I've never.
Bignastics, yeah.
After I got my first muscle up, Erik coined the term bignastics.
I didn't coin it. I took that. I don't remember who coined that, but I took it from someone. And yeah, if you're over 200 pounds. So actually, along those lines, the average CrossFit male back in the early 2010s, the average games athlete was around 180, 185 pounds. That has now moved to, I think, right around 195, maybe 200. The games athletes are heavier, but they're moving much heavier weights than they ever did before. So,
and still doing the cardio, still running, and still rowing, and still swimming,
right.
And still doing those amazing box jumps and gymnastic movements and rings and bar work and muscle ups and you name it, climbing ropes with no legs, arms on, all that kind of stuff at 195 to 200 pounds.
Right. So, for me, obviously, this is my world, and I see a little bit. You were talking about, is that movement catching on outside? You look at some of the popular podcasts. I'll give Joe Rogan credit for having anybody and everybody on there that's pushing anything that could do with health. Some of it's good, some of it's not. But You have, Dr. Andrew Huberman. You have, I think, Peter Attila is the other one that's popular. These are doctors that are now pushing weight training, and we're starting to recognize the general health benefits of this stuff. So I hope it's catching on. But again, you mentioned outside the US, we don't really suffer from that. I'll tell you what, I had a friend that went to England, and they referred to him as big guy. Not a compliment. And to them, the fact that he was weightlifting.
I just came back from England, and a couple of times, both in a taxi, as a taxi driver, in a tube, people mention something along those lines. And I do not have your physique, but for a 58-year-old guy, I sort of kind of stand out.
I was telling you this earlier. You have muscle mass.
I do have muscle mass, and it stands out and puts me in a UK society in London, and it stands out a lot.
Yeah.
It actually stands out. And people comment on that. Men comment in a positive way. Women's like, that's strange. I don't see a lot of that. But it's different. It really is different.
So I know in this country, we've definitely seen a push to normalize resistance training just for the health benefits of it. When I'm on social media, I'll see a couple classmates of mine from high school that have gotten into it totally on their own, which is awesome. Love to see it. But for me, it's hard to say just because I'm so immersed in this. And, I think, that was a nutrition client I was meeting with earlier before you came here. Just the stuff that I do is so normal for me, and I've been in this for so long. It's hard to, we had a staff dinner on Saturday, and I had a 28-ounce strip steak.
28?
Yeah, which is...
Was that enough for you?
51 is my record.
Oh, okay.
So
you're more than 50% there. That's
right.
good. That's good.
But one of the other coaches is like, I've never seen anyone put away steak that fast. And I'm like, this is normal for me.
You and I should have a steak off.
I can eat a lot. And I wrote an article on this years ago. I went down to visit my college roommate in D.C. and I went to I called it bougie. And I laughed because my wife was just there a couple months ago, and she's like, it's not bougie. It's a southern restaurant called Succotash in Washington, D.C. Okay. And I ordered the chicken and waffles, and so did my roommate. And it was like 2 chicken thighs, so maybe 6, maybe 8 ounces of chicken, and a half a Belgian waffle. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, that's it?
That's it?
And my roommate, he played tennis at Yale, he still runs. Actually, for my wedding, he was running in Philly, and he can run. We did a 10K together, and I think he maintained like a 7:30, 7:40 mile pace.
You did 10K?
The day after we went to that restaurant, yes. It was my zone 2 cardio day anyway. So hopped into an impromptu 10K. The goal was to keep the heart rate under 150, so it was a very, very slow 10K.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, yeah. I can complete it. It's just not going to be fast. I could have gone faster, but again, heart rate was the goal. And but my point is, he's built like a tennis player and a runner. He's a lot leaner than I am. And he's looking at that meal, and he's like, wow, this is a lot of food. And I just wanted to be like, hey, if you can't finish that, can I have the rest of yours?
Can he deadlift 500?
No, I don't know what he can lift. But again, that's the point is, my background is significantly different than his. My training is significantly different than his. He's got a leaner frame to begin with. And, we talked about where does dysmorphia come from. Looping back to that, I brought up some of my upbringing to you. Again, everybody's a little bit different. So this idea of the ideal really shouldn't exist. To use the word should in a proper context is... everybody is different. And that's why we try to encourage people to focus on performance rather than looks. I'm built like my father. I'm a little shorter, thicker bones, a little stockier. And my brothers are built like my uncle. They're taller. So even my younger brother's taller than I am. Apparently, I'm the runt of the family.
So you decided to grow in a different direction.
To grow wide. No, for me, I got into strength training largely because when it came to sports, if I wasn't the most talented on the field, I was going to make up for it with hard work, and I was going to be able to compete with you. What I lacked in skill, I was going to make up for in physical capacity. That was why I got into it.
Did that work for you?
Not well, depending on the sport.
Oh.
So, like, wrestling was my main sport, and in wrestling, yes, I could make up for a lot of that by overpowering people.
Mm-hmm.
But there, when I got into jiu-jitsu, a little bit less so.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more finesse in that as opposed to wrestling. Wrestling, straight up conditioning, straight up strength made a big deal. You could be pretty meat and potatoes in terms of skill if you could overpower people.
Correct.
The more nuanced the sport, the less that played a factor. But, my brothers growing up didn't have to do shit, and they had abs. They were just naturally thin, and it was exposed. And, for me, if I wanted to have any visible abs, I had to work a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And, my own history with a little bit of dysmorphia was largely shaped by that and the fact that what I now recognize is them being insecure for being thin, so they had their own issues with dysmorphia. They would take that out on me by calling me fat. And I was actually normal. But to me, it was, no, you're fat, and we had other things going on. My mother was actually trying to bulk them up a little bit. So it was little things like that I didn't recognize until they started calling me fat. She would have them drinking whole milk while I'm drinking 2%. And my recollection was always skewed. She put me on 2% because I am fat, and she's trying to lean me out a little bit. But in reality, it was the opposite. So
trying to fatten them up.
Because they were so thin, and there were other issues. I didn't realize my older brother was being bullied in school, and there was a ton of other shit that I didn't know was going on.
So
but again, it's the perception.
That's the flip side question of
right.
dysmorphia. When and how did normal become fat?
Right.
Right? So the lean, chiseled, abs visible, delts popping, big chest, big arms, muscular legs is the new norm. And the norm that everyone has lived with for centuries and centuries and centuries now is fat or skinny, for that matter. It's not normal. You're too big. 16, 18% body fat. No, you're fat. When did that change?
That's a good question. And that's what I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not a history major.
In terms of the lean, muscular, ideal male, we go back to Greek times. That's why I throw that out as, look at the statue of David.
He's lean, but he's not huge.
No.
He's no Arnold. I mean, he's not
massive.
Cattle. He's not massive.
But
he's lean.
Proportional.
He's proportional. Thank you. Proportional. I don't know.
I will say, if you look at the sport of bodybuilding, it's a whole other debate about, Arnold was never the biggest.
No.
But he was very well proportioned. And then you get into, the early 2000s, late 90s, you get Ronnie Coleman, you get Jay Cutler, and they were what
Coleman was
the mass
beast.
Monsters. Yeah. And they're putting on size more so than necessarily the symmetry. And Arnold always compared bodybuilding to being a sculptor. You're trying to chisel away what's on top to get to what's underneath.
Interesting.
And
that's exactly how
then you
sculpting
look at
works.
And then you look at like Ronnie Coleman, there's none of that mindset. It's I'm trying to add. I'm trying to build to this rather than chip away at it. So I don't know.
Both
starts
extremes are dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Both. Putting on that's not there, taking away what is there but shouldn't be there. Again, the proverbial should. The image, that delta between what people tend to see is painted externally from outside in. People see images and more images and more images. Again, age of internet, age of YouTube, age of advertising and whatnot, movies, constant visual messaging. This is what James Bond looks like. This is what Superman looks like. This is what G.I. Joe looks like. This is what, X-Men look like. This is healthy. This is strong. This is powerful. This is the way to look. This is what wealthy women, successful, look like. Jet set, thin legs, thigh gap, tall, lean, very, very, no muscles at all. And Twiggy was a supermodel, right? There's not much muscle mass there. Yeah. Look at Miss Twiggy. Look at the current female average CrossFit athlete that is very strong. We talked to you, but strong is the new skinny, right? When did you hear that phrase first? I mean, I feel it's catching on in my practice.
I think strong is the new skinny. I saw Merle push that back in, I want to say 2011, 2012.
Okay.
He had it on t-shirts for the ladies in the gym. Outside of Relentless, what I saw was strong is beautiful is what was pushed. So rather than calling it the new skinny, it was framed a little bit differently. Like, this is beautiful.
I like that. Strong is beautiful. I think it's a better message than it's as strong as the new skinny.
Yeah, I mean,
it's different. It's easy.
With all respect to Merle, one is definitely much more what he would say.
Okay.
Comparative, and we're replacing, it's a little bit more combative to say that strong is the new skinny. It's let's replace this with strong, and the message is more one of replacement as opposed to, just qualifying strong as beautiful in and of itself. So
we have, bred into us, the box, this whole idea, 1% better than yesterday. I compete against myself, bottom line. And this whole idea of images competing what people see in the mirror versus what they see on TV or in the movies, that's not competing against yourself. That's competing against something. What did you say about Hugh Jackman? Right? Or was it Hugh or his? No, that was about Froning. That he is the fittest white man with disposable income and whatever.
Under 6 feet, yeah.
Under 6 feet with disposable income. That's more accurate, switching over this idea that body dysmorphia, body image issues and whatnot, comparing it against yourself only because we're so different and unique. If that message can get out there somehow, I think a lot of problematic, truly debilitating dysmorphia of consequences can be addressed somehow. Just do something today that will make you either lighter or stronger tomorrow. But you got to work. You can't just look at the images. You got to do something yourself.
Yeah,
in a constructive way.
Okay, constructive, that's
constructive.
Key. And I was going to say, the only substitute for hard work is plastic surgery. And again, I know a great one.
Or drugs.
Yeah, the heroin, she looked great.
There you go.
Yeah, I guess that would be the question then, is assuming the message does get out there, how do we help people internalize this? And, is there a way to kind of filter out all that noise and reshape the ideal in our minds so that it's more about what my body can do and how I can feel as opposed to how I look?
The marketing companies out there will put a collective contract out on you if you try to do that, because it'll take money out of their pocket. People are happy with the way they look, and they're happy with the most important, right? You and I discuss how you feel. How do we mentate? How do we feel about ourselves? How much energy do we have? That is the ultimate measuring stick. I've been at 8.8%. I've been at almost 20. I've been at 12. I've been 16. 12 to 16 is the range where I feel the best. I go over 18, I feel heavy. I feel bulky. I get to 8.8. Everybody hates me, including myself. But I look great. But I look fantastic. So there's a price to pay. For anything else is a price to pay. And just carrying the balance, this ever elusive balance of look versus feel, external messages versus internal perception. That's a challenge. Again, there's nothing, there is no silver bullet. If you have one, call it out.
Fair enough. So it's just constant work and constant awareness, and
better than yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Okay, great. So to bring this full circle, body dysmorphia, we're surrounded by marketing images. It's, the ideal perception of beauty has changed throughout history for both men and women. And dysmorphia is largely based on self-perception rather than how you actually look. So our message here is use methods of, I would say methods of measuring, use metrics that are a lot more subjective. How you feel, how you perform is a lot more important than how you look. And, as strength training has become more pertinent and relevant and widespread in our popular culture, we start seeing that shift and focus on health markers. Blood work is a hell of a lot more important than having visible abs.
Visible abs. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, well, I think that brings it full circle, and I really appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you for having me here, Erik. I very much enjoyed it, and bring me back for a different topic that we can sink our teeth into. I always enjoy talking with you in first person, not third person. That persona that I adopted at the gym. That's just
hopefully this was also anyone listening that's a gym member. Like I said, we know him as fucking Shelby in the gym, but yes, it is a persona. And if you ever heard him on the radio, or when I meet people that know Michael outside the gym, it's always Michael. It's not Shelby. It is a persona in the gym, and that's why we love him, because we know that it's persona. Anyway, appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll catch you next month.
Thank you, sir.
Skol. Iced tea and beer. Not
That's
together.
combination.
Not the combination.
Thanks for having me. This is great. I appreciate it, Erik.
Thank you, Shelby.